Thanks for staying with us. The Office of the Accountant General of the Federation has uncovered financial irregularities amounting to 514 billion naira in the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited (NNPCL) operations for the financial year ending December 31, 2021. Key violations include 343.64 billion naira in unexplained deductions from domestic crude sales, 83.866 billion naira warehousing in a sinking fund account instead of the Federation account, and 82.95 billion naira unauthorized deductions from refinery rehabilitation. Additionally, 3.75 billion naira unaccounted payment related to petrol sales shortfalls was flagged. The audit report revealed that NNPCL failed to provide justification or documentation for these transactions, violating the Nigerian Constitution and financial regulations. The anomalies were attributed to weak internal controls and alleged misappropriation of funds. The report also noted the diversion of 83.66 billion naira in miscellaneous income from 2016 to 2020 into a sinking fund account, forcing the Federation to rely on borrowings. The Office of the Accountant General of the Federation has recommended that the NNPCL Group Chief Executive Officer explain these transactions to the National Assembly's Public Accounts Committee. Failure to comply could lead to sanctions for gross misconduct under the Financial Regulations 2009. The irregularities occurred during a period when the federal government recorded a revenue shortfall of 2 trillion naira, with actual revenue at 4.64 trillion naira against a projection of 6.64 trillion naira. Our guest this morning is Mr. Segun Sopitan, Principal Partner, Woodridge and Scott Consulting. Good morning and welcome to the program, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, NNPCL once again in the news, and this time it was for unexplained deductions and monies that have been found out. What do you make of this report from the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation?
I mean, look, there are no surprises there. Unless you, as a Nigerian, you haven't seen the audit reports from the Office of the Accountant General before. The kind of numbers that are reported in those reports as having gone missing, they're mind-blowing. You will think that such things are not possible, but they are captured in reports, in official reports of the auditors, of the government's accounts. And the very interesting part, the unfortunate part is nothing ever happens. So you see billions of naira, literally, every one of those reports, going all the way back to 2019 or 2018.
2016 even.
And you see, 2016, and you see trillions of naira in each of those reports, either unaccounted for, alleged to have been misappropriated, alleged to not have proper documented backing, and so many other infractions, and nothing happens. So that's the part of it's the fact that there are no consequences that worries me the most, especially given the impact that those missing monies have on the government's ability to effectively execute its budgets and its programs, and then, of course, the knock-on effect and the multiplier effects that such inabilities then have on economic performance. So it's not a wonder that we struggle year in, year out with budget performance when such huge chunks of money gets missing from our largest revenue source as a country. To put this in context, Nyamgul, the budget for the Marine and Blue Economy Ministry for this year, bear in mind, this report was for 2021. That's 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Adjusted for inflation. You can even say 4 years ago, depending on how you want to look at it. So adjusted for inflation, you are talking potentially about 2 trillion naira, in today's money. The budget for the Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy in the 2025 budget is 38 billion naira, 38 capital and recurrence combined. The budget for the Solid Minerals Development Ministry is 16 billion naira. You know, these are two absolutely critical ministries that one would have thought would receive serious attention from the presidency, from the federal government, as part of, you know, those areas that we can ramp up, diversify the revenue base of the government through. And yet, look at the allocations to them. It's combined less than 50 billion naira, or just a bit above 50 billion naira, if I'm not mistaken, right? And yet, we have about 500 billion naira unaccounted for from 2021. You know, so you can see what, I mean, look, if I extend that further, the budget for the Health and Social Welfare Ministry was 1.91 trillion naira. That's roughly about 2 trillion. That money that is missing in today's value will cover that comfortably, and you will have some change. You know, so this is, it's a crisis. I don't think we as Nigerians understand the enormity and the gravity, you know, and the impact of these types of issues on our ability as a country to achieve the economic development that we desperately need to achieve. So it's a good thing you are highlighting it, and I hope that, you know, somehow this will trigger some action that will result in better accountability, especially, you know, for the NNPC, you know, which is the primary source of revenues for our government.
I always wonder when I hear figures like this, what is it that gave room for these loopholes to be exploited by the people who do? Because at some point, even NNPCL was not remitting anything to the Federation account. They were giving some terminologies that I cannot even remember now. Money was not coming until at some point they started remitting small money here and there and all that. And that is supposed to be where the chunk of our money comes from as a country to finance a lot of things. And then, according to this report, sometimes when these monies were held back, it made the country go and borrow more needlessly. And that's what worries me. So what is it that we're not doing right that gives room for this kind of things to happen? 500 and something billion naira is not something that we should just overlook, or that we couldn't see at the time it was moving until it got to that amount since 2021.
Very interesting question you ask. Let's also remember that we also have a government initiative called NEITI, the Nigerian Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, which is also supposed to be another way of pursuing and ensuring accountability in the oil industry, not just NNPC. And yet, this thing still happens. If you look at the NEITI report as well, it's extremely damning. So I think the answer to your question is it's just a lack of, it's a political question really. It's a lack of political will. It's the fact that for some reason, the primary source of income, the largest cash cow, you know, for the country is either the NNPC directly through its own direct revenues or through its activities, you know, joint venture operations and the crude oil operations generally for the country. And of course, I mean, we can't run away from the graft question, Mr. Agaji. We can't run away from it. I think that probably just guessing now, you know, speculatively, one has to say that it's a simple case of corruption. It's the fact that there are too many people involved in this malfeasance, and you just simply don't want to take them on. We don't have the political will, the courage to take these powers on, and it's as simple as that. Otherwise, how difficult is it, especially now that the NNPC is even a limited liability company, supposedly, you know, it's a private entity. How difficult is it to subject them to very strong audit processes, get a team of the big 3 or big 4 audit firms and conduct a thorough audit and a thorough forensic audit on their activities. It can't be that hard. And yet you haven't ever seen anything anywhere near those levels of accountability that we should be subjecting NNPC to. So as long as you don't subject them to those types of, to that type of scrutiny, of course they're going to get away with blue murder repeatedly. Every time that bad behavior happens and there is no consequence, that bad behavior is simply being reinforced, it's being encouraged. So if we don't make the effort to hold the NNPC accountable for its activities, make them explain every single item, in their reports, in their audit reports, in their financial reports to Nigerians, not just to auditors or to the federal government, publicly to Nigerians, then you are going to keep having these types of things where money just go missing. Nothing will happen. Remember the debacle involving the former CBN governor, Lamido Sanusi, where he alleged that 20 billion US dollars, not naira, billion US dollars, 20, was unaccounted for. Till today, the veracity of that claim has not been established. How can that be? That's the kind of thing that throws an entire country into crisis if it was other parts of the world. It's the kind of thing that presidents would resign over. So we're not doing enough to hold the NNPC accountable, and that's why we're seeing all of these things happen.
Okay, so what are you expecting that should be done at this time? This is a sector that the president should be very, very interested in. And in fact, we can safely say that he is the Minister for Petroleum. And this is happening under the watch of the same man that is still here, who, in the words of the president himself, is a shining example of the renewed hope agenda. He was saying this when Kyari, I think, clocked 60 and all that. He was using him as the example of how people should behave in his government. The renewed hope agenda will come about by people like Kyari. So, but what are you expecting now that this kind of worm has been opened from the president, from the National Assembly, and all the agencies, or all the stakeholders involved or concerned in this matter?
I have had the opportunity to have worked within the oil sector for a while, not a very long while, but I saw enough. I was senior enough within the organization to have seen the kind of things that happen. Our operations were midstream basically. And, the kind of things that you see happen in that sector are just mind-blowing. Anybody watching me, hearing this, that is involved in that sector will know what I'm talking about. The corruption, the opacity, the murkiness of transaction flows, interactions between the various stakeholders across the entire value chain, from the retail to the midstream, the downstream to midstream to the upstream operations, you just don't believe it. You don't believe the kind of things that happen there. So the NNPC is just another symptom of, I think, a far deeper problem with our country that needs to be fixed. I want to try to stay away from the political side of things, because I'm speaking as a professional, in that capacity. And the president is the Minister of Petroleum. He is the one that is supposed to hold everybody in that sector accountable. And if he's not doing so, we've got to ask ourselves why. Mele Kyari, as the Group Managing Director of the NNPCL, has a lot of questions to answer. There's so many things that are going on that just don't make sense. For example, so we now say that we've got 2 refineries functioning. These are 2 absolutely critical activities and operations of the NNPCL to the welfare, the economic growth and development of the country, with multiple linkages to the different sectors and different, indicators that should help us drive development. The resuscitation of the refineries, for example, is supposed to mean that we no longer import PMS, and other refined products. And it's supposed to mean that the pressure of demand on the dollar, reduces so that our exchange rate value can improve significantly. You will therefore expect that there will be a lot more transparency and accountability with anything that relates to those refineries. But all we are seeing are managed, very obviously well-managed and curated bits of information flowing into the public space. If those refineries are functioning, till today, nobody has seen any clear indicator that they actually work, that they're actually producing refined products by refining them. There's absolutely zero evidence, in that regard, other than statements that are issued by the public corporate affairs manager of NNPC, or very well stage-managed visits by members of the public, or government officials and all of that. It shouldn't be so. There should be transparency. We should get reports from the NNPC, maybe even on a weekly basis, as to how that whole, activity is progressing, given the importance to the national economy that they hold. How many liters of petrol are we getting from Port Harcourt? How many liters of petrol are we getting from Warri on a weekly basis, if not on a daily basis, maybe even on a monthly basis? At least the Port Harcourt one has been supposedly running now for over a month. What's happening there? How much are those products being provided to marketers? All of that is not happening. So NNPC really needs to do much better with transparency, and the only person that can make that happen is the president. And I hope that he develops the will and the energy to be able to do that. Until we do, sadly, given the importance of the NNPC, we're going to continue to struggle economically.
My people say a dog that will be a hunting dog, you will know when it is still a puppy. In these early stages, what NNPC has exhibited may not show Nigerians that they are the solution to the fuel crisis that we are having, which will lead to a reduction in prices and all that, because there's too much shrouded in secrecy. So let's leave them a little bit. If we are trying to prosper, having a better energy climate in Nigeria, what are we supposed to do? Because I don't want to go back to say now NNPCL has come. What alternatives do we have as a country that can make fuel, for instance, come down, make that sector a little bit better than it is today? Because NNPCL is not the one to give Dangote the competition we need. So what do we do?
So I think that, first of all, we have other modular refineries that are producing, but if you combine all of their capacity in terms of daily crude processing capacity, I think it's somewhere less than 50,000 barrels per day of crude. So it's not significant enough when you compare that to Dangote. So they won't provide Dangote the necessary competition. But to be honest with you, if for me to answer that question, I think this is a strategic question. And I think that what we should be doing is to provide very strong, trust, regulatory oversight over Dangote's activities, right? But then, if we are going to harness the full potential of that investment from a private entity, then the government must back, that whole thing. I don't know the right word to use for it now, with very strong policies and very strong regulation. One of them is that as we speak today, it should, for me, it's a crime and a travesty if we're still importing PMS, given the capacity that we now supposedly have. If you combine the private modular refineries, combine Dangote, combine the two government-owned refineries, Warri and Port Harcourt, we shouldn't be importing petrol anymore. In fact, it should be a policy of the government that importation must be banned going forward. That is something that we have to do as a matter of national emergency because of the impact that will have on the exchange rates and the impact that the reduction of the exchange rate will have on inflation. So that's an action that I think the president can undertake if we're serious about taking full advantage of what's happening with the refining that's going on now in that sector.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll have to just wait for the coming days and see what the government or the relevant bodies will do with this report from the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation, and also watch and see what is going to become of the refineries that we have been told that have come back on stream and are working. We're also even hoping for the Port Harcourt bigger refinery, because I understand the one that is purportedly working now is a smaller one, so the bigger one will come. Let's just cross our fingers and see whether all things will be well. But we do hope that now that this money is in the public view, something will be done about it. But Nigerians are already thinking and seeing that there will be one bogus explanation and then it will be swept under the carpet. I hope this never happens.
There won't be any explanation, my brother, and nothing will happen. At best, you will see some sort of panel set up by the National Assembly, and there will be a lot of drama there. That's even being very hopeful. The likelihood is that you just simply won't hear anything about this anymore. It's just a news item, and that will be the end of it. So until we get to the point where when these types of things come out, heads roll, in the relevant places, then nothing will happen. It's just the way it is, unfortunately.
Oh, well. Well, someday. We'd like to thank you, Mr. Sopitan, for coming on the show, and as usual, it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you for being a part of our program this morning.
It's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
You too. Mr. Segun Sopitan is a principal partner at Woodridge and Scott Consulting. He was our guest this morning while we're trying to look at the report from the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation indicting the NNPCL that there has been some kind of infractions in financial dealings in NNPCL to the tune of more than 500 billion naira. Let's watch and see what the coming days will be.